All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Happy Thursday. So we'll go ahead and get started here. I wanted to mention before, real quick here, that I see that there's a lot of posts of questions when office hours are not in session. Well, we want to make sure that we're asking questions during the office hours. Otherwise, um, you know, they're not going to get answered during the office hours. So make sure that you're asking them during the office hours. So that way, the reason why I do that is just because I want to answer questions for people that are here to see their questions get answered. So we'll go ahead and get started here. I'm going to assume that you can hear me. So if you can't hear me, go ahead and let me know. But I'm just going to assume that you can, and we'll go ahead and get started here. So I'll start with, let's see here. Samuel B says, using the 1.3 gain serious drills, I max on the 100 percenters at 77 to 79 on all the air swings and the actual ball hits. But when I go into the play swings, I got 5 at 83, 86, 87. Try as I might, I can't get close to the numbers on the max out on any of the drills. Any thoughts on variables? So, one thing to keep in mind is that when if you're hitting a ball versus not hitting a ball, some people swing faster, vice versa than the other. Usually you're going to swing at a little different speed. I'm not really 100% sure why the reason that is, but some people swing faster when there's not a ball there and swing slower when there is a ball there. And then some people swing faster without a ball. Like I actually swing faster with the ball there when I'm just doing, if I'm on the swing speed radar, and Clay swings faster without a ball there. So I don't know why that is, but that's just what works for me. So, or what happens with me. So I would just be focusing on what happens when the ball is there on your all out swings. And hey, if you're playing swings, if you're all out swings, what might be, it's hard to say without seeing your swing, but essentially what might be happening is that a lot of times when people do the all out swings, they're kind of just all out upper body and they're not using their lower body to create any momentum. So their all out swing is just all arms all the way through. We got to get our lower body going as well. So all out means 100% everything. We're using all out with our legs, using all out with our core, all out with our shoulders, all out with our arms, our wrists, everything. It is all out. So make sure that you feel like you're kind of maxing out everything. And it's not just your arms you're just swinging your arms as hard as you can, because if you're just swinging your arms as hard as you can, then when you go with your play swings and you're sequencing better and you're using your legs and everything to create momentum, then, that might be what's going on there. But again, it's hard to say without seeing exactly what's going on in your swing. Either way, do whatever gives you the best numbers, whatever's giving you the high speed numbers, that's what you want to be going with for sure. The whole idea is to gain club head speed. So go with what's getting you the best numbers. So Neville says, can you please describe the precise wrist hinge on the backswing, and at which point in the swing do the wrists cock? So this is kind of a loaded question in a sense, because you're going to look at a lot of tour players and you're going to see all kinds of points in the swing when they hinge their wrists and things like that. The reason is because it doesn't matter that much. You just need to basically get the wrist in a certain position at the top. So if you're thinking about how, you're going, this far, you're going this far in the swing, and then you decide, okay, I'm going to hinge my wrists, I wouldn't even think about it at all. I would just think about whatever comes naturally to you. Now, what I would try to think about is if you're having trouble with getting a big shoulder turn and maybe having trouble with lag in the downswing, I'd try to feel like you're setting the wrist as late as possible. So the reason for that is that's going to allow you to get the shoulders more involved early. So if I have, let's just look at me where I just set the wrist super early. So no shoulder turn and just super wrist hinge. Well, when I do that, the club's gone to this point and I've only turned my shoulders about that much. If I go no wrist hinge initially, now look how much my shoulders have turned here already in the swing. And then I can slowly start to hinge my wrist. Usually if you're in a 90-degree angle position right here, that's usually a pretty good place to be. Being about, when you're about pocket height, being parallel with the shaft, that's usually a pretty good place to be. But if you're more like this or more like this, that's completely fine too. You just got to do what works best for you. Not not every wrist hinge is going to work best for everybody. So that's why I can't tell you a precise way or precise time or anything like that, because it's really not that important. Do what feels naturally to you. And if there's something going on in your swing, like you're not getting a good shoulder turn, you're not getting lag, you may want to look at getting feeling like you're getting a later wrist hinge to improve that. So the reason why a later wrist hinge may help with lag as well is because if you're getting let's really exaggerate this so you can really see it. If I'm getting a really, really late wrist hinge, and then I decide right here, okay, I'm going to start hinging my wrists. Well, now this club has a lot further to travel, right? And now it's got a lot more momentum going in this direction, which is going to help me to generate lag. So that's part of what gives you lag. Lag is basically a combination of three things. One is just this. If I hold it straight up and down 90 degrees, it's just the club being able to turn my wrist that way. So most people can do about 15 degrees, 20 degrees, something like that. So that's just turning my wrist back like that. The other part of it is shallowing out the club. So watch, if I go like that, if I have that same angle and I go like that, now look at the appearance of lag that I have here. So that's the second piece. And then the third piece is momentum. So now you can see if I do all those three things at the same time, look at that lag. Now everyone's built a little bit differently. Is going to have varying degrees of lag. We see that on the PGA Tour as well. So don't be freaking out if you don't have 45 degrees of lag or anything like that. As long as you're generating some lag in the swing, you're in good shape there. But basically, if you are picking up that club early, and now I'm just going up to the top, I don't have as much momentum to create lag in the downswing. So you can also overdo it. If you get too late of a wrist set, and now you've got so much momentum moving this way that you don't feel like you can control the club, that can also be an issue. So you just got to look at what's going on in your swing, what are you struggling with the most, and work on the pieces with your technique to help improve those pieces. Everything has to be to improve what's going on at impact. So those two pieces there are mainly to help you get more speed in the swing. That's really where the wrist hinge, but you just got to I always tell people, do what feels natural to you. If it feels natural to you to kind of pick up the club and bring it back, and you're still getting a good shoulder turn and generating lag in the downswing, then stick with that. Why change it? That's completely fine. But if you're struggling with your shoulder turn and you're casting the club, you may want to think about just feeling like you're basically setting it as late as possible. I would exaggerate it as much as you can. Feel like you just set it as late as humanly. Feel like you're right there until you start to hinge it. And then if that's too much, then just ease off of it. Maybe just work on, okay, now waist level. Let's see how I do there. And then if that's too much, you can feel pocket level. Maybe that's when I start hinging the wrist. So that's what I would kind of be working on. And there's a great video in the power turn section where it's the wide takeaway drill. I believe it's in either level 1 or level 2. And you can work on getting that nice wide takeaway in that. But don't get too caught up in the nitty-gritty little details of things. If you do that, you can't do that with everything. You just got to focus on what's going on at impact and how you can improve that. And if you just work through the Top Speed Golf system, a lot of those things are going to improve those pieces of impact very, in the best way. All right, so let's go on to the next one here. So Mark K says, I'm hitting my irons relatively solid and good direction, but taking very few divots. What does that indicate? Am I not closing down the club face enough and losing some compression? So you're mostly, it's kind of like that basically. So if you're not taking a divot, it basically means that you're releasing that club early. So if I turn this down a little bit, if I grab a club here. So if you're releasing this club early, you can see how it's kind of leveling out. Let me angle this down a little bit more. There we go. So you can see that this club is coming in, and it's coming in very, very level with the turf. So if I'm coming in and I'm releasing early, when I say release, I'm talking about the release point being when that club is splitting the forearm. So if I choke up on this club, you can see how it's splitting right there. You can see the grip. This would be an early release. This is typically what you see with a lot of amateurs as you see that club's releasing right there or somewhere in there, somewhere in that area, 15, 20 degrees out in front. You see tour players, that club is releasing out here. It's about 40, 45 degrees out in front. It's usually what you see. So if that club, if you're releasing it early, it's coming into the turf very, very level with the turf. And that doesn't allow you to hit down on it and get that divot in front. So basically what you have to do is you have to time that ground contact and the golf ball pretty much exactly at the same time. And usually I'm guessing you really like shots or lies where the ball is sitting up on the grass like it's on a tee. Those are always the best ones. And that's pretty common with people who release the club early, which is pretty much, I would probably say 80% of amateurs, 75% amateurs are releasing the club at least a little bit too early. But that's basically where that comes from, is just releasing that club too early. So what you're talking about in closing the club face is part of it. So one thing that's going to help you, the biggest reason why people release the club early is one of two things, essentially. It's either casting the club, I was just talking about a minute ago. If you are casting the club, you're releasing this club already from the top of the swing. That's going to lead to an early release through impact because you're already releasing it. And then the other piece is coming down steep. So you can be generating some great lag here, but if this club is straight up and down, very vertical, you would ideally it'd be pointing, at this point in the swing, it'd be pointing at or a little bit outside of the golf ball. From that point, you can really turn into the golf ball and get that club face closed down. But if this shaft is steep, what happens is you're going to typically stand up, and because you got to get this club to come back down on plane. So what you do is you stand up, and when you stand up, you have to flip the club to get to the golf ball. You get that early release. So I'd be looking at those two things. Are you casting, and are you shallowing out the club in the transition? So that's going to be the top speed lag course. And working through the drills in the top speed lag course. To get to the courses, just click the house icon, scroll down, you can see all the courses there. And then also the move section. The move section is the combination of shouting out that club, squaring the face earlier in the swing, so that you can get forward shaft lean and take that divot in front of the golf ball. So those are the two courses that I'd be looking at the most if you're having trouble taking divots. All right. So Paul L says, hi Q. So I'm in the rough, say 5 yards off the green. Grass is quite long. What's the best club to use? I'm currently using an 8-iron, but usually too long. Any suggestions? You're going to need to want to use a wedge, probably a lob wedge. And the reason is you're trying to get that ball to pop out of the grass. So if you are using an 8-iron, that ball is going to come out really, really hot. And two, that club can kind of get caught in the rough a little bit, and it won't come all the way through, and you won't, sometimes you don't get really good contact on it. So I would use, a wedge. If you have a lob wedge or a sand wedge, that'd be the best thing to do. And depending on how bad the lie is, if it's a pretty good lie, you can kind of just hit it like a normal pitch shot and just take a little bit firmer of a grip on it and just make sure you're kind of getting through the grass, and understand that it's probably going to roll out a little bit because the grass is going to be getting between the ball and the club face, and that's going to reduce the friction on the club face. You're probably not going to get a lot of spin. So play on it to roll out a little bit. If it's really a bad lie and really deep down in there, basically you want to kind of put it back in your stance a little bit, and you're going to want to kind of try to pop the ball out. So kind of try to chop in behind it and use the loft of the club to get it out of there. And again, this is going to be a hard shot to control, but if you just go and practice it a little bit, we don't have any videos on this on the website. And the reason is because there's really no, at least at the courses that we play or that we do the videos at, there's no like a really long rough or anything to do this kind of video. So it really just, I wish we had it, but we just don't have it here in Florida at the courses that we're at. I'm sure it is at other places, but we wouldn't be able to do this shot justice. But I know in the mid, I play a lot of my golf in the Midwest. I know there's almost every course there has some thick rough or something around the green. So I definitely know it's out there and it's a shot that needs to happen. But yeah, I would try to kind of chop in behind if it's really, really deep in the rough there. That's basically what you got to do is get a wedge, use the loft of the club to kind of pop that ball out of there, and that will help the most. So Jim H says, seem to hit the ball further when start backswing with left lat. Great. Yeah. So if you're getting good results from a different feeling, then I would stick with it. Yeah. So continue the good work there. Charles F says, try to start my downswing by turning my hips. Right-handed golfer. The spinning of the hips seems to shoulders, arms, and club out and over the top. Results ball way to the left. So it sounds like Charles F he's thinking about, man, I gotta get these hips to open up. But what's happening is everything's kind of coming with it. So he's turning his shoulder out, and the hands are kind of going out, and then he swings over the top. Closed club face, left club path results in a pull. Very, very common thing. But basically what you want to feel like is that your right shoulder is going down and you're coming in from the inside. Feel like you're swinging not in front of your body, but to the side of your body. That's what you want to feel like, almost like you're bowling. I always try to give this analogy because most people have bowled before, right? So when you go bowling, you got the ball like this, and you're approaching it, and you throw it like that along the right side of your body. So that's kind of the feeling that you want to have when you're swinging the club. You're coming in and you're throwing it along the right side of your body. So see how my right shoulder, when I'm doing that, is going down like that. Your right shoulder, when you're doing this, is going out like that. So I try to have the feeling. Another good feeling, especially for tennis players, I actually have a tennis racket right here, is to feel like you're hitting a forehand, right? So if you were hitting a forehand, you wouldn't go like that, right? If you're an experienced tennis player anyway. But usually what you're going to do is you're going to open your body to the ball, right? And you're going to hit it like that. Same thing happens in the golf swing. You want to be opening up your body and hitting like that. That's the feeling that you want to have. So you can even do some one-arm practice swings where you're trying to feel that same thing and get the sensation in both arms. So do one arm right-handed and get the feeling of doing that. And you can do that with the left hand too. Do some left hands where you're really feeling like you're turning this handle down and opening up. So you can see how I'm opening up. Feel like you're swinging along the right side of your body. You're going to need to feel like the club and the arms and the hand are more behind you as you're working through, and that your right shoulder is working down and your lead shoulder is working up. When you get everything working like that, that's what's going to cause the over the top is this right here. Feel like it's working like that instead. You're swinging very much into out like that. So that's the feeling that I would try to have when you're doing that. Use that bowling or tennis, whatever relates to you the most. When I give lessons, a lot of times I ask people, hey, did you play any other sports growing up? And the reason why I do that is so I can relate it to them. A lot of times that works really well. Because I ask somebody, like, well, how do you hit it? Someone who's a former baseball player, well, how do you hit the baseball? They always tell me they go, it's like that. Well, but they hit a golf ball like that. Well, you want to hit it. It's kind of, a lot of the mechanics are the same thing from sport to sport. Any powerful movement is going to come from creating momentum with the lead side, and everything's kind of from the ground up. Any powerful movement, if you think about a pitcher, right, it's the same thing. They're loading up and they're turning their body. It's the same thing in golf. That's why you see a lot of great, if you look at the pro-ams and stuff, you see a lot of great pitchers that are also fantastic golfers, right? Mark Mulder, John Smoltz. I think these guys are like scratch or plus handicap players, and it's because they really know how to use their legs to create momentum, throwing the ball really, really fast. So same thing applies in golf, a lot of the same positions. So I'd be looking at it in kind of that perspective and see if that helps you. So Ryan P says, "Hey Q, on Clay's videos, it looks like his hands are in front of his lead leg at impact. When I look at my swing face on, my hands are in the middle or even slightly toward trail leg. Can you talk about how you want to move your hands through the hitting zone? Wondering if I'm stopping my hands too soon and if you might be contributing to the occasional deadly chunk." So the reality is that your hands are probably in the same place in relationship to your body. I would look at your hips are probably not very open at impact. You're probably coming into impact and your hands are, if I angle this down, so your hips are probably pretty square, I imagine. So you're like this. Your hips are pretty square at impact, most likely, and your hands are probably more like in this range, I would guess. Well, Clay's hands are actually in the same place in relationship to his body because his hips are opened up. So from face on here, it looks like my hands are in front of my trail leg. But if you were to go square to my hips, so now let me go like this. I'm going to basically square my hips to the camera here, and I'm going to put my hands where they would be at impact. Now it looks like my hands are in front of my trail thigh here. So it's really in relationship to the body, it's the same thing. So I think the same thing that I talked about with Charles F is actually going to be a good feeling for you. You need to feel like the club is kind of behind you more and that the hands are moving more along the right side of your body instead of in front of your body, because that is exactly what's happening. Is that when it's kind of a chain reaction. If you come in and your hips are kind of slowing down, they're stalling, well, that accelerates your shoulders. And then your shoulders stall out, and then that accelerates your arms. And then your arms stall out, and that accelerates the club. Because everything has to end up in that position to get down to the golf ball. So you want to keep everything accelerating through, and that comes from proper sequencing, getting a good weight shift to your lead side. So doing that drill that I talked about, whereas doing the one arm swings, getting the feeling of that, swinging along your right side, and also doing what's called the step drill. It's really the best drill for getting the right sequence of the swing. And basically what you're doing in the step drill, you're starting with your feet together. And as soon as you start this backswing, you're starting to step forward. And you're timing the step with you reaching the top of the swing. And as soon as that comes down, you're starting down and you're swinging all the way through. I can't really do it in here. I don't have a lot of space to do it in here, but if you're looking for that step drill, what I'd recommend doing is going to the search engine on the website. So in the upper right-hand corner, there's a search box. Search downswing. There's a great video. It's called How to Start the Downswing. I believe it's the third video down. It's got some yellow lettering in the thumbnail. If you click on that video, Clay's going to demonstrate that step drill in there. And I'd recommend working on that because part of what's going on, that chunk is probably caused by the early release of the club. When you release this club early, so if you look, if I'm releasing this club out here, out in front, what's happening is I'm hitting the ground back here. But if I'm coming in and I'm releasing the club early, I'm hitting the ground back here. So that's probably where that chunk comes from. A lot of times it's just from an early release. So Jim S says, I'm trying, but on the range, I keep hitting the ground early. Strangely, when actually playing and my focus is out on a target, I tend to not have the problem nearly as much. Any thoughts on why I hit the dirt on the range? That could be a million different things. It's really impossible for me to say without seeing your swing. Usually early release is kind of the number one piece that causes chunks. Maybe when you're thinking more target oriented, you release the club a little bit later, but an early release can be caused by casting. It could be caused by coming down steep in the swing. It could be caused by you square the club face by kind of flipping the club instead of turning the handle down with forward shaft lean. Could be caused by improper sequencing. It's really, really impossible for me to say without seeing your swing. So I'd be looking at all those things. But I mean, hey, if you're getting better results by being more target oriented and thinking about that thing out there, it's kind of like that bowling analogy that I talked about, right? When you are bowling, you're thinking about the pins that are out in front of you. You go and you swing that hand like that. Everything's kind of opening up to the pins. Whereas golf, our target is out there, but we also kind of have a target in front of us, which is the golf ball, because it's a side-on game. And a lot of times we're focused on that target instead of the target out there, and you end up doing that early release and things like that. So like I said, it's hard for me to know exactly what may be going on, but like I said, if you are you should always be hitting out at a target when you're out on the range as well. So if you're doing something that you're getting great results from, I would stick with it. And if you go away from it and you get bad results, I think that's kind of a key indicator that you should go back to what you were doing before. So yeah, I definitely feel like you're more target oriented, but like I said, just to know exactly what's going on, I would have to be able to see your swing for sure. There's just too many things that could be going on. James Q, Mark K said, thank you. No problem. Glad I could help. James Q says, if I get my lower body and hips through properly, doesn't this automatically shallow out the club? I seem to have problems when I hit and think about shallowing at the top. So I have actually seen some teaching out there where I've seen some instructors saying that all you have to do is sequence correctly and you're going to shallow the club automatically. That is so far from the truth is not true. You can still sequence properly and cast the club. All you have to do is do this with your wrists. That's the only thing you have to do. Now, it's easier to shallow out the club because what's happening is that if you're getting your lower body involved, the forces are kind of moving like this. And what happens if I do this and I just move my hips, what happens with that club? It wants to drop down. It wants to. That doesn't mean it's going to, but it wants to. The forces and everything are moving in your favor. That makes it easier to make that happen. So that's why sequencing is important, because otherwise you may be kind of fighting physics. If you're swinging from the top, you're going to tend to want to go like that. But you can also, as Charles F. was talking about earlier, he was talking about getting his hips more involved and things like that, and he was still swinging over the top. It doesn't automatically shallow out the club. You can still, if you open up your hips and everything, you can still go like that. And that sounds kind of like what Charles was doing. So it makes it easier because now you have the forces kind of going like that, which help you to shallow out the club, but it doesn't mean it's automatically going to happen. So if you're someone who's getting the lower body and everything more involved and you're still going like this, you're probably going to need to feel like you're shallowing out the club. Maybe you're getting the elbow more in as you're coming down. Because remember, if you got that elbow out, you can be doing this, getting your hips more involved all day. But if that elbow's out, that club's going that way. It's not going to go. It's not going to shallow out. Your wrist isn't, it isn't like Gumby. Most people can't have this elbow out and shallow the club and keep the hand. I can't even keep my hands on the club and have my elbow out like that. I have to take my hand off of it. So that's about as much as I can do. Now watch. So I got this club basically shallowed out as much as my wrists will allow. And if I start bringing this elbow up, see what's happening to the club. I can't shallow this any more than what it is right here. My right wrist and my left wrist, they won't bend that way. So you got to get that elbow coming in to make that happen. You got to get that shoulder kind of working down and out instead of out over the top. So that analogy that I was talking about, where with the tennis player hitting a forehand or bowling, or I think Clay's talked about on the website. If I give you a rock and told you to toss it, you'd probably toss it like that, right? You wouldn't toss it like that. You would toss it like that. If you watch anybody, people who play cornhole or bags, right? Probably a lot of people that have played that. You don't see people play cornhole. They don't turn their side to it and throw it that way, right? They throw it kind of like that. So that's exactly what you want to do in the golf swing. In the golf swing, you're not going like that. You're opening up and releasing that club out in front. So, don't believe in instructors saying, and anyone who says that it's automatically going to shallow out the club. That's just flat out not true. You can still come over the top and things like that. And I think Charles F on here will definitely tell you that that's not true. All right. So Ed D says, so I've been having good success with the ideas you gave me in the club is behind you video. My question is, should the wrist be passively released in the downswing, or is there a point in which you should actively throw them to the straight line release point? Same question about the arms. So Ed, basically this is the way I always answer this question. When someone asks me, should it feel passive, or should I actively be doing this? What you feel in your swing and what I feel in my swing are going to be two completely different things. You feel what gives you the best results. You look on camera and see, okay, am I releasing this club too early? What's going on here? What's, does feeling more passive, does that give me better results? Or feeling more active, like I'm really turning everything through, does that give me more better results? You got to look at what gives you the best results. Some people feel like they're really, really passive, and some people feel like they're really, really active. I don't know. Everyone's built a little bit differently. So I would just go out and do what works best for you, what gives you the best results. I know that's not the answer probably that you're looking for, but the answer to the question is just flat out, I don't know what you should feel, because I'm not you. So you just got to work on the right. Everything about golf is mainly about adjusting your feel to get the desired result that you want. So if you want to get a certain result, you need to adjust if you're not automatically and naturally doing it, you need to adjust what you're doing to make what you want to have happen. So if you are, for instance, if you feel like you're swinging perfectly down on plane, and the reality is that you're doing this, that you're coming way over the top, then you need to feel like you're swinging way like this. Even though that's not the reality of what you're doing, you need to feel like this is what's going on to get the club to work down more out in front. I personally don't like the feeling of super passive. I feel like I'm going down to the golf ball with everything I got. I don't feel like my arms are just connected to my body and I'm just using my body to swing my arms and my arms aren't doing anything. I'm feeling like my arm is just popping off my chest as hard as I can. I feel like through impact, I'm going as hard as I can with my wrists. And that all comes from, I think most players are probably going to tell you something like that. And that comes from, if you have proper sequencing and you're getting to your lead side and you're leading everything with momentum, you're probably going to feel that way, that you're feeling like you're giving everything you got. But some people might feel like they overdo it with the right wrist. So they come in and they're going with the right wrist like that and they're flipping. Well, some people feel like they're going as hard as they can and they get that right position. So that's the main thing with that right wrist or the trail wrist, for the left-handers, is that you're really trying to get that to release out in front. So if you're really trying to push this club through to square up the face, that can cause you issues. That's one place where I would say you want to feel probably more passive with the right hand. But if you are too passive, basically, and this club is releasing too much out in front, well, at that point, you may want to feel like you're giving it a little bit through there. So everything is just about adjusting your feel to get the desired result that you want. If you have proper sequencing, nothing's going to feel really passive. And the best way to work on your sequencing is to do that step drill. That's really the best one. How to start the downswing. If you go to that video, search it on the website, do that step drill, I think you're going to get that proper feeling a little bit better as you're coming through there. So Richard N says, when I consciously try to get forward shaft lane, I shank the ball. So again, this is, consciously, I'm actively feeling, I'm, passively, all these kinds of things. If you're not getting good results from it, you need to do basically something else. It sounds like you're still releasing that club early. You got to look at your swing on camera. The camera is not going to lie to you in what's going on. So a lot of times when you're trying to get forward shaft lean, you're pushing the hands out in front, and that club is kind of working from the inside, and you still flip the club, and you get that that hosel rocket off of there. So you just got to look at your swing on camera. The best thing I would tell you is I would try to intentionally try to strike the ball on the toe. That's the best way to fix shanks just right away. If you're out on the golf course, and you start hitting a bunch of shots off the hosel or near really in the toe, intentionally try to strike the ball off the heel, and intentionally try to strike the ball off the toe as much as you can. And what most likely is going to happen is it's going to move that strike closer to the center of the club face. If you overdo it and actually strike the ball on the toe a little bit, then just ease off of the feeling. So that's the best way to do it. The main reason I see with shanks is the hips are moving toward the ball in the downswing. So instead of turning through and rotating into impact, I see this where the hips are going like that, and that pushes the hands toward the ball, which pushes the hosel toward the ball, which causes shanks. That's definitely one of them. And swinging too much from the inside. When you swing too much from the inside, that hosel is just going right at the golf ball. So I try to maybe feel like you're coming over the top a little bit to get rid of those shanks as well. So Robert M says he has the same issue. Yeah, so I just look at your swing on camera. I try to feel like, so Robert M says, I think it's to do with hip slide. So exactly, if you are just sliding your hips, so if you're going up the top and then you just slide your hips forward, a lot of times it's that, and that club a lot of times will come from the inside, and it will also move your hips closer to the golf ball, which is going to cause those shanks. So feel like you're coming in, you're really pushing that lead hip back and out of the way, and you're swinging more over the top. And that's not the reality of what's going on. You're not going to be swinging over the top. You're just adjusting your feeling. So if you feel like you're doing this when you're usually doing this, it's most likely going to put that club right down there. You're going to be able to open up to the ball. The other thing is, if you're coming down steep, you're typically going to stand up out of your posture, and that's going to cause that same issue. So make sure that you are, shallowing out the club. You're not casting the club. Make sure that your hips aren't moving toward the ball. Those are all the things that cause the shanks. But immediately, the easiest way to fix that, just to get some immediate feedback or immediate results, good results from it, is just to feel like you are hitting the ball off the toe as much as you can. All right, so Quentin Neville says, Quentin, you have covered the point you make with the wrist cock, but not the precise nature of the hinge. The wrist can hinge back on itself or vertically, like hitting with a hammer. These are two wrist breaks, produce a different club face position at the top. I really wanted to know which way you should break the wrist. So basically, at the top of the swing, your wrist is going to be pretty flat. So if you go at the top of the swing, ideally that wrist would be pretty flat. If it's cupped, that means that you're going to have to manipulate the face a little bit. You can hit a great golf shot from this cupped position, but if you keep that cupped position all the way into impact, the face is wide open. So you got to square. There's just more you have to do in the downswing. So that's why I recommend having more of a flattish wrist at the top. That's basically a pretty close to square position. If you were to keep that all the way into impact, you would have a pretty close to square club face. So that's the first piece of it. And then at the top, basically you're going to be maxed out with this. So as you're starting the downswing, you're going to be maxed out in this position. So this thumb up, turning it back, that's about 20 degrees. And then in the downswing, ideally what you do is you would turn this handle down a little bit. So that's going to get that club face squaring earlier so that you can have forward shaft lean and a square club face at impact. Because if I keep this wrist angle here at address, let me angle this down a little bit. If I keep this wrist angle here at address, and I just push the club forward, you can't really see it, but my club face is wide open here. So what I got to do is I got to turn that handle down to square up the face. That's what gives you a square club face and forward shaft lean. So that's kind of what's got to be going on in the downswing, is kind of that right there. So that's in the move section, the tennis racket drill. That's going to get you to where with that lead wrist is. And the trail wrist is basically doing the opposite. The trail wrist is bending back. it's working in unison with that lead wrist to get that club face to be squaring up. So, and then as you're coming into impact, it's slowly starting to unhinge. So it's going thumb out a little bit as you're coming into impact. So your thumb out, your thumb down a little bit, and you turned it down. So that wrist is kind of in that position right there. So that's basically what's happening is you're in this thumb down position at address. So thumb down and both wrists here. And then as you go to the top, and you're pretty fairly neutral position as far as your flexion and extension. So palm back, palm forward. You're pretty neutral position there in both hands, and thumbs are down here, and neutral position as far as pronation and supination as well. And I'm sure I'm going to get people saying I'm pronouncing that wrong, but that's fine. That's just the way I say it. I'm not a kinesiologist or anything. So as you're going up the top, you're going to start rotating both of those. So you're going to be pronating and supinating both of these wrists as you're going back, and then you're going to be going thumb up with both of them as you go up to the top, and no flexion, not much flexion and extension at all until you're getting up to the top, and your trail wrist is going to be bent back. So it's going to be in wrist extension here. It's almost like you're holding a tray at the top, like you're a waiter and you're holding a tray, and then that lead wrist, that left wrist, it's going to be a fairly neutral position to either a little bit of flexion there is completely fine, and you're going to be in that completely thumb up position, and then the same thing as you're coming through. So hopefully that gave you some details on exactly the movements of the wrist, but exactly when those things happen, it's completely, I would just do whatever comes naturally to you when those things happen. If you want crazy detail video, we actually have a crazy detail vault section where you can go in there. And to get to that, you can go to the instruction tab and go to vault categories, and then go to the crazy detail category. If you're looking for, you just want to know all the little nitty gritty things, how the wrists move and things like that, I'd recommend that they have, Clay has videos in there about basically all different parts of the body, and elbows and legs and wrists and things like that. If you want, you can go check out those videos as well. But those videos are not meant for you to go out and make sure that every little movement at every little point in the swing is exactly correct. That is, I will tell you, that is a huge waste of your time if you're trying to go out there and do that. Your best use of your time would be focusing on basically the 5 pieces of the Top Speed Golf system and getting your impact right. So working on those, that's what's really going to help you to improve the most and the fastest for sure. All right. So Digiano@AOL.com. And I'd recommend you not put your email on here. Just put your name. I'm not sure how your email got on here, but I just recommend not putting your email on here. You never know this is kind of, it's public in a sense to people who are Top Speed Golf members. So you don't want a bunch of people having your email. So I'd recommend not. I'm not sure exactly how you sign up on here to get your email in there, but I'd recommend not doing that. Anyway, you said you talked the other day about loading up on the right side on the backswing. Can you talk about the difference between stack and tilt and what TSG teaches? I was given a Golf Tech gift for an evaluation. It seems to me they teach stack and tilt. Not sure I want to continue and change what I've learned here at TSG. So I'm not really sure what Golf Tech exactly teaches. And I will tell you, I'm a novice in what stack and tilt is really all about. But my understanding of it is that you basically just keep your weight on your lead side the entire time. So as you're going up to the top, you're trying to keep most of your weight there. And then in the downswing, you're keeping it there. So it's basically in doing that, here's the issues that I see with, you can hit great golf shots doing that. But one, they're not going to be very, very powerful, because in every single powerful movement, there is a loading up, and then there's a momentum shift and transfer to the lead side. You wouldn't see a quarterback throw a pass where he stayed on his lead foot, maybe Patrick Mahomes or something like that. But if he was trying to throw, a normal, solidly mechanic throw, he's not just staying on his lead foot and throwing like that. He's rearing back and firing. You look at a pitcher, probably a better example. A pitcher, they're not just off of the rubber throwing off their lead foot. They're kicking up and they're getting their momentum moving toward the plate and throwing forward. So they're using their lower body to create a powerful movement. So with that stack and tilt, you're kind of just keeping that weight there. You're not getting any momentum shift, and it's just not going to be as powerful. The other thing about it is that it seems like you would kind of chop down into the golf ball. Like I said, I've never tried stack and tilt. I don't really know anyone who's tried stack and tilt. I don't know any stack and tilt instructors. Like I said, I'm a fairly novice in what it is. I may be completely wrong about what I kind of think of it, because I don't really understand it. But it seemed to me if you were to keep your weight on your lead side, you kind of be leaning toward the target a little bit at impact. And that would cause you maybe to chop down into the ball a little bit too much, hit it really, really low with a lot of spin. Not very good for distance either. So the fact that, this is really a distance game, that's really the biggest correlation to people with higher handicaps to lower handicaps is club head speed distance. That's really the number one thing. So that swinging in that fashion, I feel like it really cuts that. It's got to cut down on your distance quite a bit. But like I said, I don't know that much about stack and tilt. I don't even know if it's really around anymore. And I don't know what Golf Tech teaches exactly. I haven't heard that they teach a stack and tilt type swing, but maybe they do. Maybe they do at the location that you're at. But not really something, because I don't know that much about it. I can't say that I don't necessarily recommend it, but just from what I know about it, it's just a way to, you might be more consistent doing that, because there's not as much moving around and things like that. But man, you're really going to be hitting the ball very, very low because you're chopping down into it most of the time. And also, I just don't see how you can get as big of a shoulder turn and momentum shift to your lead side if you're keeping all your weight on your trail side. So Charles F says, our bunkers are really hard, 60-degree lands behind, but bounces into the ball. So if you have really hard sand or packed sand bunkers, it's actually a very easy shot. The biggest difference is you're just going to have to hit closer to the golf ball. So typically on a bunker shot, you would hit. So if here's your golf ball right here. You would want to enter the sand about 4 to 6 inches behind the ball and leave the sand 4 to 6 inches in front of the golf ball. And it doesn't look like you can see that real well, so sorry about that. But with a bunker shot out of hard sand, you can't really do that, because what happens, and it sounds like that's what happened with you, Charles, is it comes in, it hits the sand, and then it kind of bounces out of the sand because you're using the bounce of the club like you should be, and it scolds into the golf ball. So all you really want to do is you just want to hit 2 to 3 inches behind the ball. It's the same technique basically. You're just hitting 2 or 3 inches behind the golf ball. You're getting a little bit closer to the golf ball, and you're not going to have to take as much of a swing with it. You still want to make sure you're accelerating through, but you won't have to swing as hard to hit it as far. So I would just go practice that. Just hitting, use the same technique as you normally do. The easiest way to practice this is just to go, if you're hitting out of hard sand, is just to go and draw 2 lines that are 6 inches apart. So let me use a different color that might be easier to see. So if you draw 2 lines that are 6 inches apart, so that's about 6 inches there. So 2 lines 6 inches apart, and then I put my golf ball right in the middle of that, and then I would hit some shots, and I'll be able to see where I'm entering the sand in relationship to that line, and then I can kind of adjust my feel. So if you come in, you feel like you're hitting 2 inches or 3 inches behind the ball, and you're actually hitting 4 inches behind the ball, and you're not really getting the ball out of there, then you may want to feel like you're getting a little bit closer to the golf ball. This is actually an easier shot than if it's really, really fluffy sand, because the club can kind of get stuck in the sand a little bit out of fluffy sand like that. If you hit it out of this, it's definitely not getting stuck down in the sand. It's just, it's just kind of sliding over the top of it and you get that ball coming out with lots of spin. So it's actually easier to hit it out of a bunker that's harder or packed with sand. So that's what I would recommend doing. Just go out and practice hitting a little bit closer to the ball. I know it's a little daunting, but once you get used to it a little bit, it's actually pretty easy. Just got to practice it a little bit. James M. says, on the backswing, it seems like I'm bringing the club too high, and it's hard for me to get on plane. I bring the swing lower, and then what Clay said, when I try to swing the club high above my shoulder, I stand up through the finish. Can I use a swing like chopping a tree? So I wouldn't recommend standing up out of your posture. You want to remain in your posture, because if you stand up out of the swing, one, you're going to have to make a compensation to come down to the golf ball. And also, your shoulder, if you stand up, your shoulders are going to be level at the top. So that does a couple things that aren't very good. One is you're going to tend to want to swing out like that. And two, you may not get as big a shoulder turn as you can get, because if your shoulders are level when you're coming back, you can't really see the golf ball. So you might end up swinging like this so that you can see, shortening your swing so that you can see the golf ball. So you want to make sure that you're staying in your posture, so that way your shoulders are on a good level here, and that way you can get a full backswing so you can still see the golf ball down there. So I definitely do not recommend standing up out of the swing. As far as swinging higher, you really just have to find the happy medium that works for you. There's kind of pros and cons to both. So if you look at someone like a tour player, for instance, that swings very, very vertically, that'd be someone like Bubba Watson. He's probably the most vertical swinger on tour. So the benefit of being very, very vertical, where the hands are really, really high and straight up, the benefit of that is that you have more space and time to accelerate the club to be able to create club head speed. So you could get more distance. Doesn't mean that's what's going to happen. It just makes it a little bit easier. And then the benefit of being flatter is that you're more on plane already, and you don't really have to do much with the club to get it on plane. It's just swinging already on plane, so you don't have to manipulate it to get it to shallow out. But the problem with that is you're just not going to be able to get a lot of speed from here, because there's not as much space. So you really just kind of have to find the happy medium that allows you to get your hands high enough to where you can get enough speed, and it's in a place where you can get this club to shallow out and come back down on plane. So you just kind of have to play around with that and find what works the best for you. If you're really, really struggling with distance, I try to get your hands as high as possible, and then really work on getting that club to shallow out in the downswing so that you can create as much club head speed as possible. If you're someone who has tons of speed already, and really it's kind of theoretically you would be more consistent getting this club back down on plane. But yeah, you can work on maybe trying to flatten it out a little bit to make it easier to shallow out the club. So it's really to each their own. That's why on tour you see so many different pieces, so many different things that players are doing. You see a lot of different ways of getting up to the top of the swing, but everything's pretty much the same as they're coming into impact. And that's all because they do everything from the Top Speed Golf system. They all get a good shoulder turn. They all generate lag. They all have a stable spine. They're all releasing that club out in front. All of them have a good compression line, body opening up as they're coming into impact. Those are really the key things that get you in the right positions to hit the ball well. So I'd be really, really focusing on those keys. But if you're working on distance, yeah, getting the hands higher is going to help you to create more speed. And if it doesn't, and you're having trouble to getting the club back down on plane, then I would just go back to what you were doing before. If you're getting the same amount of club head speed from here as you are from here, then you may as well just be here if it helps you to hit the ball a lot better. So if it's not, the whole point of swinging more vertically is to gain club head speed. So if it's not getting you more club head speed, then I would scrap it and try something else that gets you more club head speed. So James M says, thanks, Q. No problem. Glad I could help. Robert C says, just started the process. Stable fluid spine was recommended. Starting point, is it recommended that you complete all levels of each topic or level one of each and then come back around? So you can do it either way. The course is really kind of set up to do level one of each and then kind of go back and do level two of each. But really it's kind of based on the individual as well. So if you're really, really struggling with your swing. If you look at your swing on camera, I really kind of recommend going through the entire course and just watching the video so that you understand what each piece is. And that way, when you look at your swing on video, you can see, okay, this is where I'm struggling the most. And then I would put in more time in that area. And then once that area is worked out, I would go to the next piece where you need to put in more effort. You may look at your swing and you're already getting a huge shoulder turn, and I'd maybe just work on it for a little bit and see if you can get a better shoulder turn. But if not, move on. Move on to the next piece. So it's just about what fits your personal needs. Some people need a little bit more work in areas than others, but the way that the course is set up, it's set up for you to go through each level. But not everyone's the same. So do what works, what is better suited for you. And again, if you want help with that, we do have Unlimited Swing Reviews program where you can get help from an instructor that can tell you exactly what you need to work on and what pieces you need to work on. I know that can be hard thing to do, and it's daunting sometimes, especially if you've never really looked at your swing on camera. So yeah, we're here to help with that. So sign up for the Unlimited Swing Review program. I believe Robin and myself have spots available right now. So go ahead and sign up, and we can help you with that for sure. All right. So Rod P says, at the straight line release position, Clay makes a deliberate motion releasing his ulnar deviation. Does this happen naturally, or do you have to work at it? So again, this is a question where somebody's asking, is this a conscious effort? Is it an automatic thing? If you're not doing it, then you're going to have to adjust your feel to get the desired result that you want. I would say that it's most likely for Clay, it's probably a natural feeling. He probably doesn't have to feel like he does that with the club as it's coming through there. It's just the momentum of the club's kind of carrying it out to that position to fully release out in front. But if you are basically coming through impact and you're kind of chicken winging, or basically that is more of a natural feeling. I couldn't imagine not swinging through, but that's just the way I feel. What you feel might be completely different. So basically the answer to every question where somebody asks, do I actively or naturally, is this automatic? The answer is that if you are not doing it, if you're looking on camera and you're seeing it, because the camera's not going to lie to you, if you look on camera and you're not doing it, then it's not a natural thing for you. You are going to feel like you need to manipulate things to get the club to be in that position. So, and that may be about manipulating things from here to get to that position. That's usually what it comes down to. Because after impact, you're not really, I can't imagine that after impact, you're thinking about the hands kind of staying like this, unless you are trying to keep the face open, in which case you would kind of be like that. But in most cases, the hands are rolling over and you're squaring up the club face, and you're in that hands, thumbs down position that you're talking about there. So, like I said, not everything comes naturally to everybody. You just got to look on camera and see if you're doing it. If you're not doing it, then it's not a natural thing for you. You are going to need to feel like you are manipulating. You're doing an active thing to make it happen. So hopefully that makes sense. I know that's not the answer a lot of people want to hear, but it's just that, it's basically the truth of the matter there. So it's pretty much 4:00 right now, and we don't have any more questions on here. So we'll go ahead and wrap this up for today. So thanks everybody for joining me on the office hours for today. We'll be back here tomorrow, Friday, 9 a.m. Eastern time, back here to answer your questions once again. In the meantime, hopefully everybody has a good evening, and I'll talk to you next time.